As journalists and television hosts, scripts are a lifeline. Each newscast, each story, it all revolves around a script.
But now it's time to go unscripted. That means we're not just going off script, we're throwing out the script altogether.
Each week, we're joined by fellow Farm Journal hosts and editors to peel back the layers on stories we've shared throughout the week.
Unscripted. It's real, it's raw, it's entertaining, and it's your chance to meet the personalities behind the personalities. I'm Tyne Morgan.
And I'm Clinton Griffiths. Welcome to Unscripted.
Oh, here we are, Tyne, once again for another episode of Unscripted. It feels like it's been a minute.
It's been 2 weeks, to be exact.
That's
a minute, 2 weeks. Sometimes it feels like a month. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, right? We are in that time. It's
Always.
busy season for farmers, busy season for us on the road every week traveling. I say there's light at the end of the tunnel, but I'm not sure, Clinton, when that light is at this point. It's way down there.
I heard someone describe adulthood this way to me once. They said, being an adult is saying, after this week, things will slow down every week until you die. And I think that's probably true.
That is farmers too.
Slow down.
That is farmers too. You talk to them. Well, after this week, things will slow down. Then you give them a call. Well, after this week, things will slow down. That's just how life is. It's chaotic. It's good. But last time that we had our podcast, we had Missy Bauer on. I mean, so enlightening. She is just jam-packed full of knowledge and information. We were talking about how she was really concerned about soybean yields. And I mean, absolutely. I had heard some things, but I'd call the farmer afterwards and I'm like, listen, Missy Bauer said that small seed size could be taking 50 to 20 bushel per acre off of yields. She said she doesn't think farmers realize it yet because it was some of those later planted varieties. And the farmer was like, well, I'm getting off the phone because I'm going to go walk my bean fields right now. And Clinton, after that conversation, I don't know if it's either I'm paying attention to it more or now I'm seeing it more, but you sent me a picture over the weekend of a farmer that had the side-by-side difference of beans from last year, beans this year. And he was saying, I think 20 to 25 bushel per acre difference in seed size alone. Just crazy.
Well, and it was like and it is real obvious whenever you were able to save last year's beans and you can see the difference in size versus this year. I mean, that's when you realize, oh my gosh, like we didn't finish real great. Now we've had some rains here lately. I mean, is it too late? Probably. In a lot of places, they've already started cutting and things are going. But, it's funny because Missy will tell you that they like to knock the leaves off of their soybeans. If they can irrigate, they're going to irrigate. And so maybe a little bit of this late season water will plump a few of those beans and we'll get a little help here. But
I think it's too late around here.
Yeah. I know in some places they've already cut them and they're taking them to town.
Yep.
Well, hey, speaking of being busy, why don't we bring in our guest today, who I think may be the busiest person I've ever met, because, she just runs the tightest ship I think I've ever seen. Let's bring in pork editor Jennifer Shike to visit with us a little bit about kind of what she's up to this week. And Jennifer, I think maybe you are one of the busiest people I know. You rolled in at like 3 a.m. today.
Yeah.
Okay, that's embarrassing, but I did roll in. I pulled the late shift, so we just got back from the Exarban contest with our judging team, and Dan handed me the keys at 11:30 p.m. So I had the shortest drive, but I did the 11:30 to 3.
Oh my gosh!
So for us non-show people, explain what this is.
So this is a judging contest. So the kids were not showing livestock, they were judging livestock. So we took our 4-H team. They were second at our state contest, 4 kids. So juniors and sophomores in high school. We drove all the way to Grand Island, Nebraska. Oh. And they basically, on the way out, we stopped at different farms and we did workouts. So we practiced on 4 animals and then they have to place them. So it's a little bit like a dog show, beauty pageant, whatever. They're placing them in the order they like them best. And then they have to give reasons to explain why they made the decisions that they did. So it was a lot of fun. My son was on the team, but my daughter also competed out there on another team for our state 4-H team. So I got to see both my kids, my older kids. We left the little one at home and we set off across the country with these 4 kids. It was a lot of fun. They had a great day.
Is it always?
Exhausted. And you're exhausted. That's how it
so
goes.
Tired.
Every parent is so tired.
Is it always in Grand Island?
No. Well, Exarban is, yes. Yeah. So Yes, that's where they've moved it. It used to be, I believe it used to be in Lincoln. And then they moved out there. That facility is amazing. I don't know if you guys have been there, but
I love Grand Island. My favorite town in Nebraska is Kearney, and people wonder why. I love Kearney, Nebraska, and Grand Island's just a nice stop on the way.
Yeah, it was really fun. That was my first time to go there, so it was a really great event. And but yeah, we're like leaving there at, I think it was maybe like 5:30 when we headed out, and I was just like, why do we do this to ourselves? We must love our kids, right? Like where you just will go. And I know you guys do that too. You just go do crazy things because you love going where they go and getting to be a part of it. And I guess you only get to do it once, right? So
well, that's not a fun drive either. I-80. I used to say when I lived in South Bend before I moved to Kansas City, I wanted to, take 9 trips, get one free. Like you could transport yourself, because I-80, that trip is not.
And I didn't go I-80. We took 36.
Oh, God's country. Went right through northern Missouri.
Deer country. The land of a million deer right now. So it was just like every time I would drive by and I'm like, wow, there's 10 deer I just passed. Like, glad they stayed on that
glad
side.
they stayed there.
Probably a few less in November. You just hit it a little too early.
Oh, yeah, right. Exactly. So, it was actually a fine drive, and everybody was pretty tired. So we were a lot less chatty on the way back than we were on the way out. So
yeah, absolutely. Hey, well, before I know we could catch up and talk the entire time, but why don't we get into a little more specific stuff and do a little talking tea today?
Okay, Jennifer, you know what it means to spill the tea. This is exactly that, talking tea. So really giving us the goods, giving us what's the word on the street in the land of pork, hogs and pigs. That's what we want to know from you this weekend.
Oh, goodness. I spent my last week at the Layman Swine Conference. So I was surrounded by some of the industry's top veterinarians and researchers. And so it's always a great event. Lots of talk about PRRS and its impact. But we also spent a lot of time talking about influenza, especially as how it connects to the avian influenza and what they're experiencing with dairy cattle right now, but why it's so important for us to keep it out of our swine population. So we spent a lot of time talking about flu, PRRS, and then we had the hogs and pigs report to finish out the week. So it's just been quite a bit of stuff going on in the pork industry.
It's interesting. You talked about some of the animal disease, and I feel like a couple of years ago we were kind of in this kind of crazy whirlwind of things that were kind of adjacent to U.S. pork production. Fingers crossed, right? We're heading in. We've done a good job with biosecurity. We're in a good place, but it's important to keep talking about all this. What was maybe the one or two things that you learned that you thought, oh, I think this is a good reminder for folks?
Well, okay, so hang with me here because I know this is maybe an odd topic, but one of the things that we spent a lot of time talking about, and I went to an earlier session so I could listen in to hear more about this, is dead animal disposal.
Okay.
And that's not a glamorous topic, but the reality is when you raise livestock, sometimes animals get sick with disease and die, and it's something that we have to do a good job of how we manage that. But I think why it's so important to think about is not only just public perception, doing the right thing, not spreading disease. So we talked a lot about it and how do how we dispose of dead animals impact disease management, and how do we keep disease from spreading from our farm to our neighbor's farm and so forth. But, also as we think about what would happen if we were to get a foreign animal disease, we really need to be thinking through all of those appropriate things that we should be doing with dead animal mortality management so that we're prepared if the worst situation ever happened with a foreign animal disease. So while I know that's maybe not the topic you guys were looking to talk about today, it is something that's really that I found to be really interesting. And there was a lot of discussion about it this year at the Layman Swine Conference.
It's not that we didn't want to talk about it. All bets are off when it comes to Unscripted. We talk about it all and more. Speaking of animal diseases, so this week we're headed to World Dairy Expo in Madison, Wisconsin. So I'll leave first thing in the morning. And what I found out is, showing dairy is different than other livestock. And you're reminded of that when you go. They wear white pants. They carry around these poop buckets. Never made sense to me. They, when they take pictures of the animals, you should see it's like glamour shots, but they're acting just crazy in the background to try to get the animals to stay still. It's really funny when you go and from an outsider who's never showed dairy cows coming into this event, it's pretty funny. But this year, because of avian flu, there have been more complications in getting these animals there. I mean, this is the World Dairy Expo. So these animals are coming from all over, a lot from Canada. And so there's always quite a bit of logistics to figure out when you're traveling hundreds of miles, thousands of miles with these animals. But this year, one other complication is, well, dairy cows, you still have to milk. And usually they will stop at other dairies to milk the cows on the way out. Well, this year, because of avian flu, not a lot of dairies want you to stop by as they should be more cautious and increasing biosecurity. So this year, not only are they having to come long distances like they always do, but trying to figure out where to milk these cows on the way to World Dairy Expo, on the way to Madison, Wisconsin, has been another layer of difficulty. And we've been talking about avian flu. Clinton, when did we start covering that? April, May?
Yeah, it was something around there, March, April, May. I mean, it's
March.
Yeah, I mean, and it's still kicking around. We're still talking about cases in California.
New cases in California. So you think about those California producers now that are heading into the Midwest to show. And there's a ton of producers from California, a ton from Oregon. And so you understand these dairy producers being on guard about all of that. But it was just another layer that I didn't think about, having to milk these cows on the way out there as well. Just something that you don't think about with other animals.
And I think, Jen, and correct me if I'm wrong, right? Because this is your world that you're in every day. I feel like, that biosecurity piece is something that pork producers, not recently even, but multiple years ago, kind of embraced and said, "Oh, yes, as an industry, as a group, this is something that we've got to take seriously," and they have.
Yeah, I mean, they're leaders in that, right? They're showing everybody else how it works. And so one of the things that we talked about was the next generation biosecurity concept, where we take all this science and knowledge that we've gained. So not only like direct transmission, where nose to nose, this pig touches that pig, they spread a disease. Obviously, we see that with our children, but also aerosol transmission. So why we need air filters, why we need to think about how diseases spread through the air. Fomite transmission, so how it's on our clothes, on our body, on our boots, on our tires of our vehicle. Also talking about transport biosecurity, how it moves from farm to farm on different vehicles and so forth. But then also now we're talking about feed biosecurity and how virus can live in feed. And so I've got a story in the works right now with Scott D, but talking about how that layered approach has really made a huge impact on Pipestone. So they went from, in some cases, having like 50% rates for PRRS. And now because of next gen biosecurity, they've been able to drop that to less than 10% for 3 years in a row. That's huge. So, I mean, biosecurity works, but like anything, it's pretty hard to do it perfectly all the time, right? Because humans are involved. So it's interesting to think about how AI and how robotics and different camera technologies might enable us to even take that to the next level. But I would definitely say, because of how pigs are raised in modern, pork operations, it's different than like beef cows in a pasture or even in a feedlot, for example. Right. We have the ability to control the environment a little bit better, which helps us to do even better biosecurity. But I think there's a lot of lessons that the other species can take from what the pork industry has learned, and sometimes the hard way.
Well, and that's what the dairy industry said from day one. That's who they were kind of taking a page out of the pork industry's playbook. And I mean, Clinton, I think about it, it's rare that we can go in a pig barn or a hog barn, and get footage. And it's not because producers are, not wanting to show what they do behind closed doors. That's not the case whatsoever. It's biosecurity, and they have to think about the health of those animals and the risks of those animals and set that as a priority. That's always been the case. Like, I assume when I go to a farm and interview a pork producer, I'm just not going to be able to go in that barn. And I'm okay with that. Yeah, because I know biosecurity is the top concern. Well, guess what? We haven't been able to go in some of these dairy producers' barns now, and it's exactly the same case with the hog industry. And so, I mean, I think it is definitely, like you said, Jennifer, it's taking a page out of out of the pork industry's playbook, because that's not something, I just assume there were biosecurity measures already in place for the dairy industry. But when this news first started to break, I mean, they talked about having to create plans and that's just something that I thought was already in place, but it wasn't. So a good reminder to us all. Unfortunately, we've had to find out the hard way. And on that note, I mean, when we look at avian flu, the headlines that I'm reading recently, are all about how egg prices are going to go up because of the impact on avian flu. And so we're not reporting on it every day. There are still cases. It is just a reminder that it is still out there. And when you look at the poultry industry, just a reminder of how devastating this is.
Well, one of the things I was also going to add that we talked about last week, somebody said, well, what are your expectations for this fall with fall migration of birds? Well, the truth is that the interesting thing about fall is if there's a feed source, they said birds don't have to migrate at any certain time. Like there's more of an urgency in spring migration versus this time of the year. It's like, well, I've got a feed source. The harvest is later, so they're not in such a hurry to go. But when they do go and how they go, that's when our chances of transmission are going to occur again. So I felt like they were saying, let's hold on tight because here we go again. I felt like that was the vibe that I was getting at the conference.
Interesting. Yeah. That's fascinating. Now, Jen, this all kind of be part of some of the conversation you're hoping to have, because you're starting a new podcast yourself here coming up that's going to be focused on really the pork industry, pork business, and kind of, all of these important conversations that your industry is having.
Right. Yeah, we're really excited to start up the pork podcast this month. It's Porktober. So all month we're going to be doing all things pork, special focuses, contests, fun surprises for our readers. We're really excited about this opportunity to talk about pork in different ways. But one of the things that we're going to do is I've been dreaming about doing a podcast for a long time. I'm not going to lie, guys. I watch you do it and you make it seem so easy. And I'm not really sure that I feel like it's going to be quite that easy. But I'm looking forward to finding a way to tell a little bit more of the story behind the story. Because, we only have so many words to get things done. And sometimes there's parts of the conversation that I don't get to include. And I'm hopeful these podcast episodes can be a way for me to give our readers, listeners, viewers a little bit more about the pork industry and really a lot more about who the people are in our industry. So we'll talk about science, we'll talk about research, we'll talk about news and policy, but there's going to be a bit more fun and a bit more of a people element to it.
I've got advice to make it easier, Jennifer. This is my one piece of advice.
Okay, hold on. Let me get a pen. Yeah. I'll write this down.
Get a good co-host. That is the key.
Okay,
That's my problem. I don't have a co-host.
You find one. Because when Clinton took vacation that week, I was like, I can't go on. I can't do this.
Listen.
Clinton, are you busy Friday?
Yeah. You know what? I'm available. Whatever. It's fine. I will come on anytime. You just let me know. We'll just make it up as we go. We'll just talk. And that's why this one's called Unscripted, because we're just just talking through it, just making it up. Hey, so Jennifer, you're a phenomenal writer and you write incredible stories about people. And I know that's where your heart is. And you love to tell a good people story. Tell me your favorite story that you've written in the last couple of years about the most interesting person that you told a story about. You have one?
How does she choose just one? Is probably so what she's thinking.
I know.
Because I get attached to everybody I write about. Like I find myself just, you connect with them, you build a relationship. It's kind of funny you bring this up because I was talking to groups of students. That's kind of my side gig that I like to do. It's been really fun. And we've been talking a lot about interviewing lately. And I mean, that's not a very sexy topic either. It's like interviewing. But that's like why we do what we do, right? Like that's truly what we all love, is that trying to figure out the story, try to understand people a little better, build connections. But, I think the one story that has really been an impactful one to me is the story that I wrote about Madison Caldwell. And it's a heavy story. It's a big, kind of a deep story, but it's a story that doesn't stop. So I was getting ready to speak at the Ag Media Summit this summer. It's the Friday night before I go talk about interviewing. And I'm like, well, I don't know what to say about interviewing. I just do it. I don't know what my tips are. So I was, kind of just beating my head against the wall, wishing maybe I wasn't a procrastinator. And then Maddie texted me and she said, "Hey, Jennifer, I just want you to know that you're on my mind today. And I wanted you to know that I had an opportunity to speak." And anyway, long story short, I won't get into all of it, but one of the farmers that she was in an event speaking about mental health said that the story that I wrote about her parents was the first story that he saw. And he was in a situation where he felt like he didn't really have a lot to live for. And he read that story. It made him change his mind about what he was going to do. And that story saved a life. So I don't mean to like jump from dead animal disposal to mental health. I'm sorry, but there's a little bit about what we do. And I think it's what I love about what I do too. Like, I get a chance to cover science and research, which I think is fascinating and important for producers. But we are all human beings. Yep. And if we can't be honest and real about our health, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, all those things, like I just feel like we're missing something. And so I hope that's something that I can bring into the field of agricultural journalism is a little bit of that too, because that has been a story that has been life-changing for me, but has been life-changing to other people. And it was life-changing for even Madison to be a part of that experience of being able to tell her story to somebody who truly listened to it. Mm-hmm. So I guess lately I've been telling people my best tip for interviewing is just to be a good listener.
Well, and on that note of that heavy topic, I mean, when you talk about mental health awareness and suicide awareness, Clinton and I have been talking about it. We need to do more of those stories, especially right now when you look at the grain industry and you look at just the profit margins. And in the pork industry, for sure it is ugly. And the recent numbers that we had from Lee Scholes of Iowa State University, he does such a good job of quantifying what it looks like. And we had talked about last year how it was probably the most brutal year as far as profitability goes ever for pork producers. But he says they forecast in 2024 it to be $6 per head losses for pork producers. That compares to the $32 per hog losses last year. Okay, so better, but still in the red. And then in 2025, economists forecast an average loss of $3 per head for producers. And so what he's saying is the 2023 to 2025 period could be worse than 97 to 99. And so you hear these numbers and, I thought things had improved, and obviously by these stats, they have improved, but they're still in the red. And so it's these conversations that we're going to have to continue to have because, and even in the cattle industry, I mean, Clinton, I was at Kansas State last week talking to Glenn Tonzer, and here I am, cattle prices are so much better, but he reminded me, he said, Tyne, you've got to look at the margins. The margins are not that great, actually, when you look at the cost side of it. And so just a reminder to all of us how delicate this situation is right now. It was that way for pork producers last year, and we covered it extensively. But now you have the grains and it's just an ugly picture out there.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jen, I think that's what makes the story that you mentioned so important. And I think, it goes to some of the comments. I got a text message. I may have told this story on Unscripted before, but I got a text message a few weeks ago from a farmer, and I wasn't even sure like how he got my number, but he said, listening, I was in a bad place because it hadn't rained. It was dry. Yields don't look good. And, the guy comes on the radio, I think it was Davis, and he's like, "Hey, you're, handsome newsman, Davis Michelson," like he always does. Just
that's Davis for sure then.
Yeah, laughing, having a good time. And that guy's like, it just turned my day around. Like I felt like, okay, maybe I'll be okay. And I just, business is business, and business is high pressure. It's high stress. Margins are margins, like, and I think that's where in agriculture we get this world that is like blended between lifestyle and profitability and business, and all of those things blend together. We identify as a pork producer instead of I'm Clinton Griffiths and I also produce pork. You know what I mean? So like it becomes our identity, and it's just so hard to separate those strands in agriculture. And I think that just adds a little bit of pressure to everyday life out in rural America. And so, Jen, I appreciate your passion for it. I think your advice for listening is so important. And I think, people that even aren't writers, need to spend a little more time listening. Maybe look around once in a while and notice your community, because there's a lot of people that are hurting. And, it's a challenge. As we all know, like, our own grocery bills are not what they were a few years ago. And it's like making ends meet gets tougher. And I just feel like there's just a lot of listening we need to do. So anyway, Jen, I appreciate you sharing that story, because I know that is something that's just, near and dear to your heart.
Yeah, that was a special one too. And what you were saying, though, you made me think of a story that I just put out last week about a group of veterinarians who came together because they were looking for exactly what you're talking about. Like, they live in a small rural town in Iowa. It's in the middle of nowhere. And he said that's being kind to say that, because like literally there's like not a Target for 45 miles, he says. And it's hard. Like, how do you draw back people to want to come raise their family in that small town when there's not a Target nearby, or there's not some of these amenities that people are used to in some of these bigger city areas. And so, we were talking about that and what they did. And so basically it's like how a group of people came together. Some of them were from this veterinary clinic to basically create a recreation center. I mean, they got tons of grants. I think it was a $6 million facility altogether. And I mean, their town is smaller than the little town that I live in. I can't fathom it. So there's a restaurant in it, in addition to like a gymnasium and some other things. But he said it's where everybody comes together, and we're a community and we take care of each other. He said nobody is left alone. If somebody needs something, we're all here for them. And I mean, he wasn't just talking at me about that. That's like what he lives. And that story like makes me want to move to Audubon, Iowa, so I can be a part of that, right? Like, who wouldn't want to raise their family there? And I talked to like a local business owner who has a coffee shop, and she kind of made this joke, like, if you can't get out, get in. And basically, like, they're really going to go all in and rebuilding this community in this area. But they're doing things like they buy old abandoned gas stations and rejuvenate them or fix them up, or, they're just doing step by step to make that area better. And I thought, how like selfless and kind, because it does improve their quality of life too. It probably does help them draw people in to come work at their business. There's a lot of it that there's no monetary value back, but there's a pride and a satisfaction that they supported their community. So, I think there's a lot of cool stories like that. So I think one of the fun things about what we get to do is we get to go look for some of those stories, and, always encourage people, like, if you know of cool stories like that, let us know, because we can't be everywhere. So we need those people's, ears and eyes out for us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, let's jump over and talk about some of the other headlines and things that we've seen this week that are going to be driving the news cycle in our segment, What the Sigma?
I have two, but I think we can start the one that's on everyone's mind. And we're recording this early in the week, and so there's still a lot of details that we're waiting on to know the devastation and the impact. We know that areas of North Carolina and some of the areas of the Southeast will be changed forever. But when you look at the hurricane impact, North Carolina suffering the highest death toll at least 42 so far. And so that was reported midday on Monday. And you look at the damages that possibly they're talking about, that it could be worse than Hurricane Katrina in some instances. I don't think as far as the death toll goes, but as far as the economic impact, Clinton, I know you reported it on Ag Day, so you probably have some more details, but you look at the potential impact on the cotton crop in the Southeast, the peanut crop in the Southeast. I mean, that is minor compared to the lives that are lost. But for our sake, we have to look at it from the ag angle too. You can look at it from any mainstream media or any local. They're going to be talking about, how many losses and the impact on people. We also have to look at the ag losses. And right now, Clinton, was, from what it sounds, I mean, we just don't know the extent, and we won't know the extent for quite some time. Well,
we did get a few things, like the Georgia Cotton Commission. They're saying that they're seeing yield losses ranging from like 35% to total loss. They're saying without a question, it's going to be losses in hundreds of millions of dollars. Farm Bureau, they're saying that pecan trees, poultry houses, they're seeing flattened row crops. Some of those pecan, like larger trees, are saying lost 70% of the crop this year. Younger trees maybe around 40. We've got a peanut crop in the ground there. And then, Jen, I know like North Carolina is a huge hog production
Number three
state.
in the nation.
And I think a lot of the flooding damage seems to be kind of more on the western side of the state, but the entire state's going to be impacted here.
Mm-hmm. I remember one of the things that stood out to me when I reported on a hurricane. I don't remember which hurricane it was. It was a few years ago, but just that devastation that they had to deal with when it came to facilities and management of facilities and lagoons and trying to like just safely get from farm to farm. I think sometimes you hole up in your house or you're in your little area, you think about that. But for these pig farmers, they've got to go out to all these different locations, and they're usually kind of spread out because they need to be able to house all the pigs. And so, there's just those stresses that they're going to face as they try to go check on everything and to keep all the animals safe. And then, of course, you just always have that threat of activists who are keeping their eye on those stressful situations and trying to find ways to jump in and attack. So I feel like it's particularly stressful when these storms come and hit for livestock producers who are also reeling with their own situation plus all of their animals too. So it's a lot. And with all the port stuff. Yeah. Sorry, I was just thinking about like you've got that and then the port situation out there. Like I'm feeling for those pig farmers out in that area.
I was just going to say a couple of years ago, I think we did a story about the challenges during the flooding of getting just feed to the hog barns.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you remember that time? Like, I mean, they were taking it over on boat, like a few bags at a time, trying to get enough feed. And whenever you think about the logistics, we take a lot of that stuff for granted. And now we've got all of these communities where roads are washed out or creeks are high or there's not a bridge, and it's like, well, how are we going to get stuff in there for not just the people in that community, but for all the livestock and everything else that is there that might be impacted as well. And so, it's high on our list over at the Ag Day Facebook page, and I'm sure some of you will be putting it on Farm Report and over at Pork Business, but we're trying to put up some links where people can go to pitch in and help. And we'll try to keep that updated and refreshed as new information comes up and where people can go and pitch in. But it's an ag community, and I know folks are always interested. When it's a drought, they send hay. When it's a flood, they'll send feed or they'll send help, and we're just good about that.
There will be great stories that come out of this, but I just keep thinking about just how painful this year's been for North Carolina producers. I mean, you look at the drought and how you look at any of these USDA numbers, and it took a toll on production. So feed was already scarce. It was already an issue. It was already a concern. Now you throw this into it, massive historic flooding. And, we've checked in with some producers, and it's just so odd depending on the path. I mean, there's some producers that had some rain, but not really impacted that much. And then some that are really impacted. And so just kind of digging through to see who was impacted the most and really trying to tell that story. That'll be a challenge because the devastation is just monumental.
Yeah. Okay. Tyne, any other headlines? You got another one?
I do. Headed to World Dairy Expo. So have either of you ever been to World Dairy Expo?
I went.
How many years?
I went a couple of years, and I did have ice cream and grilled cheese, which.
Well, I was just about to say, you had too many and you weren't invited back, weren't you?
That's probably right.
I mean, World Dairy Expo, have you ever been? I take it no, Jennifer, because
I've been to the World Beef Expo, and I've been to World Pork Expo, but I've not been to World Dairy Expo.
I'm telling you right now, it is the most amazing food because you can have a grilled cheese and a milkshake for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner, and no one ever frowns on you. And somehow their media room, Clinton, has the best darn coffee I've ever had in my life. And I'm telling you that. It is so good. And then you go to the media room and it's just a plethora of cheese. I mean, if someone ever told me for $1 million, I'll pay you $1 million if you cut dairy out of your diet, I'm out. I'm out. I could not.
She's like, I'm not doing it.
I cannot. I think I have dairy every meal. I could not do it. So anyway, World Dairy Expo, headed there this week. And we talked about it earlier, just the showing and the entire, just the difficulty with avian flu and how they're being extra careful. But Secretary Vilsack will be there. He will actually be at the Global Dairy Summit. And so that's happening this week. He's going to be there along with like Krista Harden with U.S. Dairy Export Council, be there with quite a few different people. But what I found was interesting is Donald Trump, presidential nominee, you may have heard of him. He asked to go to World Dairy Expo and have an official visit. And guess what? They told him no.
Interesting. I'm guessing the logistics are crazy to have one of the presidential candidates come in. I'm just guessing it's like a crazy madhouse. Well,
and talking to Jim Wiesmeyer about it, he's like, why would they turn it down? Isn't it you would think that it'd be easier to control because it's indoors. And I'm like, Jim, no. This is like the state fair without the carnival. Okay. There's a lot of different buildings.
No, that's a perfect analogy.
Right.
That's exactly right.
There's a lot of different buildings. There's outside and inside, but most of the time you're outside going to building to building, showing, going to the Coliseum or wherever. So it's like a state fair without the carnival. But Jim Wiesmeyer, trusty Washington correspondent, he dug into it and he said the decision to decline Trump's visit was made to maintain the World Dairy Expo's nonpartisan position and avoid any indication of political bias. But I found it interesting that Trump wanted to stop at World Dairy Expo. And, I don't know, you remember Greg Dowd, who's now the National Milk Producers Federation executive director. Remember, Dowd was the chief ag negotiator for the U.S. Trade Representative's office. And so, I'm not sure how close he was to Trump in that administration. I'm not sure how much access he had to him. I'll have to ask him if I see him this week, because that stuff's kind of interesting to me. But, he's made it, when you think about those USMCA negotiations, when those were going on, Clinton and Jennifer, he always mentioned dairy farmers. So I don't know which dairy group was in his ear, but anytime he mentioned negotiations, he said, we are not going to settle with anything less because we are putting our dairy farmers first. So it did seem fitting that he wanted to make a visit to World Dairy Expo while he was there, but he was turned down. And they said because of they wanted to maintain their nonpartisan position and avoid any indication of political bias. So that's my what the Sigma.
See, Jen, I think we'll need to get, the presidential candidates to World Pork Expo some year. I think that would be fun. They could get them, bacon, hog wings. Do you have a favorite food from World Pork Expo? Like because there's always great food there. I will say, yes, World Dairy Expo is great. World Pork Expo, though, brings it. Like, it's pretty good.
I know. I mean, I hear you, Tyne.
It's pretty good.
But you cannot be, the thing that I love is like, you can just like, I'll call it wiggle around from little place to place. And one of my favorites are, I'm not really a big ribs fan. They're messy. Okay. I don't really know how to eat them very well. I feel like I'm not. And then I had to do it in front of the camera one time for you guys. That was embarrassing, but I did it.
We need to find it.
But I do, but it's
one for the team.
Good. It's so good. I just it's just not what I would ever order, but I always love it because at Expo I eat it. But they also there's these ham balls that are like so delicious. One of the food tents, one of the tents sponsored by a feed company, they have these ham balls and they're like my favorite.
Interesting.
The World Pork Expo food is amazing. And Jennifer, I'll let you talk about some of the recipes that you're going to be posting for Porktober, but I did look it up because the other day I had my dad over and cooked pork chops. I am a big pork chop girl, and we always get hogs butchered, and they're, nice thick pork chops, and the girls, they love it. And so, I was cooking pork and I brought the pork chops in, and my dad was like, it was, I think, a Monday night. And he goes, wow, this is kind of a fancy dinner for a Monday night. Like we had pork chops and bread and like, I think it was Brussels sprouts or something. And I'm confused because to me, it's just, on the grill, it's just another night. But he goes, well, these pork chops are really good. Did you do something different to them? And I said, no, I cooked them to 145 degrees. And he goes, you know what? That's the thing. I cannot get your mother to realize that we don't need to cook pork over 160 degrees anymore. And so then he got into the whole conversation of when that changed. But I just had to look it up. That was in 2011. What? 2011. So now 13 years later, and we're still trying to convince people that they don't have to basically char a pork a pork chop to above 160 degrees, you can cook it to 145 degrees and it's delicious. It's tender. It's just as good of as a steak. And any of you beef people probably are going to send me letters, hate mail. Bring it. That is fine because a good cooked pork chop is delicious.
You know
and
what?
it's good for you. It's good for you.
Yes, it is good.
But Jennifer, the majority of consumers don't think that. Whenever
I know.
Pork Board did those studies, they found that the majority of consumers think that pork's bad for you. And my question is, who in the hell put that in their heads? Like, where did this come from?
I mean, are there cuts of pork that have more fat? Sure. Just like there are cuts of all meat or all
those are my favorite cuts,
more, right? Mm-hmm. But pork tenderloin is like one of my favorite things. And it is so lean and it's so good for you that quite honestly, like, when you like pair it up beside chicken and you start to look at the nutrient value, like pork wins, and pork offers so many more vitamins and minerals too. So anyway, I know I'm obviously passionate about that, but I am for a reason because I've seen the science behind it. And so that's actually a story that someday I'm going to write that I just don't quite have done. But talking about that nutritional impact specifically on young athletes, because I think about that a lot with a wrestler who's always managing weight and thinking a little bit about how to like eat the right types of things. Pork tenderloin, that's one of the staples that he eats during season. So,
well, I think you just need to go with the Iowa State football team since they have been such great spokespeople for the pork industry and maybe for Porktober. You know, they just go on this win streak and there you go. There's your series. Just go hang out with them. Can you imagine how much pork they would eat in one setting?
Oh my gosh, right?
I think
those big
a fair
football
amount.
guys. Yeah,
per capita consumption.
I think so.
Last week I was at K-State, as I mentioned earlier, I think, and Glenn Tonzer, I had asked him about, have we seen any slowdown in meat demand? And he said, definitely, when you look at inflation, it's impacting restaurant demand. It's impacting foot traffic. And so is it as severe as what we saw, in the pandemic? Of course not. But we had seen such phenomenal growth in the restaurant space. And so to see that soften because of inflation, I mean, I look at it, we've cut back on how many times we eat out. I mean, we're eating at home more. And I think about all of the Americans that are doing the same. I could see it. But meat prices overall are up. But Glenn told me chicken prices are down, which surprises me because of avian flu. That surprises me, because it's not just the layers that are being impacted. It's all of these poultry operations. But anyway, that's what Glenn said. He has a meat demand monitor, and that's what he said last week. So I found that interesting.
Jen, now I know, you said you do have some favorite pork recipes. Do you have anything that for Porktober that people can be looking for that they can watch out and maybe put on their list? Because I think everyone's always looking for a good way and a different way to prepare
and
pork.
A healthy way.
Yeah, my favorite,
right.
I'm just going to throw this out there. We did this for the holidays last year, is a cast iron skillet pork chop with apples, and onions and barbecue. Oh my gosh!
I didn't try that. I haven't tried the barbecue. I love apples at fall time. I'm always into the apples, but it's more of a vinegar, not a barbecue.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah.
Okay, Jennifer, what recipes do you have for us coming up?
So today, I'm posting this today, so it'll be up soon. Pulled pork chili.
Oh, come on.
Okay, first of all,
good.
Pulled pork. It's like a food group for me. I love pulled pork. We do eat a lot of pulled pork. We did. Graduation party, pulled pork nachos. They were phenomenal.
Absolutely.
And we had a little bit extra. And so we kind of all joked about eating pulled pork all summer, but we do love it because it can go in so many things. I love it like pulled pork tacos, things like that too. But I've never had it in chili before. So I've got, and these are not my recipes. I went to good influencers, I'm a writer, right? I'm not going to pretend to be something I'm not, but I've talked to some really cool people. We've got fun recipes coming. And so this Farm Girl Cooks is going to talk to us about pulled pork chili. And that's kind of also a good thing to take out to the field too. So it's something that's easy for farmers right now.
Yep.
And then later this month, we've got, I'm going to kill the title of it, but basically it's something like better than Casey's breakfast pizza. So that piqued my interest because, Casey's breakfast pizza has its time and place where
that's a pretty high bar. I'm just going to
Is that a playoff? Is that name a playoff of a certain cake?
I don't know. I wasn't going to go there, but maybe, I don't know.
when I make it for school functions, I call it better than school cake. And my girls think that I came up with that name. And so they tell the teachers, like, my mom made this cake. It's better than school cake. And all of the teachers know exactly what the original name is, but you just had to come up quick on your feet. So better than Casey's. I don't know if there is anything better than Casey's breakfast
I
food.
know. This picture, though, that she made, I was like, well, that does look better. It looks better. Her picture
yeah.
looks better.
Let's
So
hope
we'll
it's
see.
not, because we're trying to get Casey's to sponsor our podcast. I'm kidding.
Right.
But they
Sure.
could.
I
I'll
don't
have
know. I'm ready to have a piece though. I think that sounds good.
Yeah,
that sounds
I
really
do
good.
too. I do too.
Okay, those are two amazing. Right, we'll keep on the lookout for.
Yeah.
For,
The
for
others
those.
I'll keep as a surprise.
There we go. Awesome.
Okay.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's given where we're at on time, let's jump over and let's end with My Fantastic Life. Now, Jen, we started you off talking a little bit about you just took a trip with kids, got to see them all, and you are family-wise. You seem like you're always in the middle of something. Like your kids are doing something, either they're running or they're showing, or
they're speaking,
or they're doing stuff with school. Give me a couple of highlights from the last couple of weeks. You have two girls, bookends, right? Oldest, youngest, and then in the middle.
Yep. I look back and I just haven't had a chance to like really absorb it, but we won our state fair this year with the barrow, purebred Chester barrow. And I'm really not trying to brag because I like literally my job is clean pens, do laundry, make sure we have food. Like I don't have a very important role in this, but we won with the spot last year. So Hunter won last year with his spot, which was the first time that we've had a purebred win the Illinois State Fair for quite a while. And so that was kind of exciting. We weren't expecting it. But this year we had this Chester barrow that we really liked quite a bit. And we weren't expecting it. We were dreaming about maybe getting into that land of Lincoln, which is kind of like the purebred side of things. But we did it again. And it was as a mom, I think it's something that you dream of, but you're kind of scared to have those dreams because you just don't think they're realistic. And also, I'm really aware that like shows are just one person's opinion on one day, and you cannot
it's
like
so
lose
hard.
yourself
It's so
trying
hard.
to
Yeah.
get that right. But when you get it, I feel like we were so busy because life was crazy then. So it's like we roll right into the next thing. But our oldest daughter, Olivia, went off to college right after that. So like literally the week that we were supposed to get our act together from our crazy summer of showing livestock and just being busy and making the most of everything. And she also won Fair Queen this summer. So I had 10 days at the county fair with her. So we were like, we're going to like go breathe for a week. Well, that didn't happen. She just rolled right off to college. But, I guess I'm pleased to say like she's doing well. She loves college. She's at Blackhawk East in Kewanee, Illinois, and she's judging livestock. And she is really, really enjoying it. She loves animal science learning lab with Dan Hogue and Blake Bloomberg, and that's been really fun for her to get to experience. And as an alum of the program, it's kind of been special for me too to kind of get to experience it through my daughter. But Hunter's doing good in school. Harper's like owning the school as a fifth grader. So, our life is different. We've only got two kids working out in the barn right now. We have livestock on feed for the American Royal in Kansas City, so we'll be heading out there and couple weeks. And so, we're good, but we are like, we thought it might get quieter with Olivia gone, and it hasn't. We've just filled it up. I don't
Was
think
it weird, or have you had a chance for it to be weird with having your daughter go to college? Because I got like a year and a half till that's going to be me. And I'm going to be honest. Yeah. I feel like it's going to be hard.
Yeah. Don't read my article. Okay. That I wrote, right? Like, don't read it around then. I've had so many people say, why did you do that to me? But I've tried to write about it. And I've had people ask me to write about different angles of parenthood, but it is hard to let go of that. Your family's just complete when you're all under one roof. Right. I mean, Tyne, you and your husband, your girls, like that's your family and this is what you guys are. And so to have like part of that be gone, even though they're not gone, they are, it is different. It's change. So it's been a lot to adjust to. I'm not going to pretend like it's easy, but simultaneously there's this great joy of like, wow, like she's doing good and she's fine. She's like, Mom, you should be happy. that I'm good and that I'm not like calling you and crying and being sad. Like I'm happy and
That's a great
I
point.
was just about
Absolutely.
to say, you raise them to be independent. You raise them because you want them to think on their own 2 feet. You want them to be independent. You want them to be successful. But that doesn't change the fact when they go away, a piece of you is missing. Absolutely. I've got a ton of time and I'm already not looking forward to it. Like but absolutely, Jennifer, you should be proud because you raised her to be independent and she's thriving. And that's what you wanted her. That's the dream. That's what you wanted her to do. But it doesn't matter. It's still at home. I know there's a piece of you missing for sure.
Yeah.
Tyne, what about you? Oh, go ahead,
Sorry.
Jen. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, like, so here's the upside. She's messy. And I have written about how she has a messy room. Like she's like does a lot of things. And I think she's high functioning in some ways. And yet she's so messy. And so I had to laugh because I'm like, well, the bathroom is so much cleaner. Harper's like, I love having a clean bathroom. She misses her sister, but she's like, but my bathroom is cleaner and I have more space. So, I mean, you've got to find the silver lining, right?
No, that's,
You know,
that's exactly.
I would take her mess back in a heartbeat, but we just laugh like, okay, well, that's the biggest upside is that we're like, well, it's a little bit, the house is less messy.
That's right.
Because the tornado has left.
And it is funny how the kids are all different. Like, my kids are all different. They're, my daughter can come in and clean her whole room in 10 minutes. And my oldest is like, I don't know. I'm going to do some other things and daydream about this. And like, next thing you know, you're like, are you going to start? Like, well, eventually or never, whatever. And it's just, they're just all wired so differently. Tyne, what about you this week? Oh, go ahead.
I mean, it's probably not a good day to ask me. The girls had to come with me to the office. And to be honest with you, I'm about to kick them out. But that's not acceptable in an office building. So yeah, they had to come to Lenexa with me. We're on 4-day weeks. So they don't have school on Mondays, and usually I have somebody that watches them. But I didn't today, and James is traveling this week, and I'm getting ready to leave. So they are with mom, and I love them. I do, and I enjoy them. I just do not enjoy days that they're in the office with me because I'm less productive. So
it's hard. Well, it's hard when you have to like put them at bay too. Like, okay, just give me a few minutes, and so you feel like, you're constantly like no one's ever really happy when you're constantly doing that. So it's
they want to start their own television show. And so they're, in the studio preparing for that. But it's just, and it depends on who's here. One time I was talking to a coworker and I came out and my youngest is upside down on her head. And she apparently has informed my coworker that she can stand on her head for a crazy amount of time because she was upside down in my stomach. And so she can, it's actually Zach. Zach, can you join us? Zach Zingula, what did she tell you?
Oh man, something like that.
Yeah, she said I was upside down on my mom's stomach, so I can stand on my head for a really long time. And I walk out, and she's on her
she
head.
was better about it than the other one. And
yes.
She's like, well, I was upside down in my mom's stomach. That's why I can do a headstand so well now.
And everything's a competition.
That makes really absolute sense to me.
You said prove it. That's why she did it. Well, everything is a competition. So the oldest had come in and said, Mom, is it true that Kimbrel was upside down in your stomach? And I said, she was breached, but she wasn't upside. She was head up, feet up. And she's like, that's what I thought. I told her. And so she runs back out. And then I run to see what's going on. And here's Zach cracking up and Kimbrel in a straight up headstand. And I do not know how long she stayed in that headstand.
Safe to say, I learned a lot that day.
You learned a lot. Welcome to my world.
Welcome to my world. That's hilarious. That is wild. Well, this weekend was homecoming for my kids. And I know, Tyne, you probably haven't done homecoming yet for the kids, but you'll get there. And when you do, your sister, she just graduated high school and went off to college. So she did homecoming. So it's a whole thing. And when I was growing up, nobody brought a sign and nobody did hey, I got to ask a HOCO proposal thing. And now it's a whole deal and a whole production. The kids all do it. And I'm like, okay, fine. I try not to judge. But at the same time, I'm like, nobody did this when I was growing up.
So what did Colton do? Tell us.
Oh, so yeah. So he got Jolly Ranchers and said it would be jolly if you went to HOCO with me, and then put those on there and give, candy. And it was
Where
nice.
did he ask her?
Just after his soccer game one day. And so hot and sweaty. And it's like, okay, well, this is fine. But they did it. and someone from his team, he came over after and had it written on a t-shirt and like took the jersey off and had it written there. And then, another teammate handed the flowers to the young lady in front of the entire stands. And so that was quite the show. But, it's a whole thing.
They did it Friday night at the football game, and I'm announcing. And so one of the players that was hurt, he did it on the track. And I'm like, listen, you're not doing this in front of me without getting called out. So I grabbed the microphone and I'm like, so what'd she say? And his face turns red. And she was like, I said yes. Anyway, my husband comes up to me after and he was like, what the hell just happened? Because he hasn't experienced these. But if any of you have a good homecoming proposal that's ag related, like we want to hear about it.
Oh, absolutely. And we want to see the pictures or the video. They've got them now.
We're video people.
Yeah.
Everybody takes video.
Did you have any good homecoming proposals in your house lately?
I was like, do I say anything or not? Like, so Hunter's date was very much like, he's like, she's just like, thinks that's kind of dumb. So she didn't want one. So I was like, well, you sure lucked out. He's like, yeah, she's like, yeah, of course I'm going with you. Like she's like, I don't need that. But they also live like 40 minutes away from each other. So it makes it a little bit more difficult. But his story is that she doesn't think that's cool. So she doesn't want one. And I was like, well, there you go. You lucked out.
She's a keeper.
She's pretty sweet. Yeah. They're more likely to go like work in the barn and do something out there. So they are like living out the ag thing, but they're maybe not making a sign about it.
Yeah.
But
That's good.
They've been judging. He was judging too. So.
It's quite the production, and
it's fun. It's fun.
And there's the pictures afterwards, which we can talk about on another podcast, Tyne, because that's a whole other conversation. But it's it's fun. And it's quite the adventure. I keep learning stuff that I'm uncool and I just don't understand the culture.
Oh, you needed your son to tell you that? I could have told you that.
Yeah, I know. And you tell me that on a regular basis, which is fine.
I'm kidding. Okay, so Jennifer, before we go, remind us where will your podcast be? How often will it be out? How do we find you?
Okay, so those are like all fabulous, fair questions. And I think I'm still learning some of it. I do plan to have the podcast is going to come out on October 11th on Friday. And so during Porktober, we're going to drop a new podcast every Friday through the rest of October. But then we're going to probably go to every other week like you guys are doing, or at least try it. Honestly, we're going to do a little experimenting. We're going to experiment on types of topics, see kind of what people get more excited about. We're going to try every other week, but if we find that we can do it every week, we would maybe be tempted to do that. I'm at no shortage of ideas. It's more of
it's trial and error. It is trial and error.
Yep.
Yeah.
Give it a shot and see what sticks.
Yeah. I'm a writer. I don't know about this podcasting, but I'm excited to try it. Fun. We're excited to share. Well, it'll be on YouTube as well, like this. Right. We'll have it on YouTube, and then all the places that you get your podcast. So
okay, so starting October 11th, you can check it out every Friday for Porktober as we celebrate October as Porktober here at Farm Journal. And then don't forget to go online, porkbusiness.com, and get the latest recipes, get some of those feel-good stories that Jennifer is so talented at writing, and more. So definitely check that out.
Jen, we really appreciate you being here. Thank you for joining us on Unscripted.
Thanks, Jen. All right, Clinton, I'm off to World Dairy Expo.
You're off to the land of milkshakes and grilled cheese.
I'm telling you.
Say fried cheese.
It is. I shouldn't say that's the highlight of World Dairy Expo because the people are really great.
It's a pretty good perk.
People are really great. We've got great analysts on this weekend. So, but I'm going to tell you right now, when you see pictures of me eating a grilled cheese and drinking a milkshake at 9 a.m., there ain't no shame in that game.
Nobody's judging. That's breakfast food.
Exactly. That's the thing is no one judges there. If I did that at home, James would judge. Hands down.
Yeah, of course. Mary Beth would judge too.
He would judge. I mean, Kimbrel this morning, she got up and asked me if she could have a fudge bar. And I was in the middle of writing a package and said, I don't care. Was I judging? Absolutely, I was judging. She didn't need a fudge bar at 6:30 in the morning, but here we are.
But here we are. That's exactly right. Well, Tyne, I've enjoyed it immensely this week. Be safe. Travel safely. We're thinking about all the folks out in the Southeast, North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, Florida, that area. So
And if you know
hopefully,
anyone impacted, please reach out. Please let us know. Like I said, I mean, it's figuring out the ag angle of this and the ag impact of this is what we're going to try to do. And, just as we start researching and reaching out to people, if you have anyone we should talk to that's been impacted, please let us know. It's absolutely devastating, Clinton.
Yeah.
And, to try to get the scope of the devastation, it's going to take a while.
Oh, it'll take a little while. It'll take a couple of weeks before we'll kind of get our arms around how big of an area, how much, how severe all the damage is, and it's a lot to overcome. So as we talked about here, if someone needs to talk, it's a good time to listen.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you, and thanks to everybody for watching us Unscripted this week.
See you next time.
Thanks for joining us. You can dive into more of Unscripted on Farm Journal's YouTube channel and listen to it anywhere podcasts are found. I'm Clinton Griffiths.
And I'm Tyne Morgan. From all of us here at Farm Journal, keep it real as you live your life unscripted.
Unscripted is a production of Farm Journal Studios, where no one grows alone.
Thanks for